Quarterback Jaxson made headlines over the weekend after introducing President Donald Trump at a pep rally Friday at Rockland Community College. Dart's appearance at the event quickly sparked reaction online, including from one of his own teammates. Giants linebacker Abdul responded to the video on social media, posting, quote, "Thought this beep was AI. What are we doing, man?" End quote. After the post sparked considerable reaction, Carter followed up later in the day saying, quote, "Me and JD6 are good. We spoke earlier as men. Y'all can keep your narratives," end quote. Dog, any concerns for the Giants locker room after this situation?
Yeah, I would think so. Listen, it's a sad commentary that you can't have any political views one way or the other because the other side is going to get annoyed. So as a result, it becomes very divisive. He's the quarterback of the team. He's a young quarterback. He's got to know better. You know what? Now's not the time to go out there and introduce the president with a pep rally. That's just not the time. I mean, you go out there and worry about your team. I mean, sometimes Dart wants to be a celebrity quarterback. We saw him at the Kentucky Derby. That's what Parcells used to say all the time. You want to be a celebrity quarterback? You want to be a quarterback. And I think there's some truth to that. But Dart's got to realize in that situation, the way the American political intensity is, this is not a smart thing to do. I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong, but I mean, from a team perspective, it's not a smart thing to do. You got to lay low. You just got to lay low a little bit. I mean, even Brady learned that lesson when, he was on that. And everybody's learned that lesson. And I was surprised. So, I mean, I hate to kill him. I mean, it's a free country. So I hate to sit there and comment about it too much. I'll let Stephen A. take care of that. But from a team perspective, if you're John Harbaugh, you cannot be happy that you're young. Played 12 games. Starting quarterback in the NFL is up there in Rockland County giving a "Go Giant" chant, "Go Big Blue," when the president's doing a pep rally. Do you want that? I wouldn't want that if I was the head coach, so I didn't like it. That's all, and I think it's a problem for my team.
Politically speaking, I'll address that on my own platform. This is not the platform for that, other than to say he's an American citizen. He has a right to do what he wants. 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, and people need to wake up if they think that everybody that they talk to and everybody that they vibe with and everybody that they hang with, none of them voted for him. You're just living in fantasy land. Some people are willing to admit it. Some people may deny it. But you don't get 77 million votes and you don't run across an abundance of people that walk in the streets of America that haven't voted for this man. That's all I'll say about that. I'll use my own platform to get beyond that politically. Doggy, you might be surprised by this, but I agree with you as it pertains to the football matter in this with Jaxson Dart. Abdul Carter and him said it best. They spoke, they handled it like men, and applaud them for doing that. We don't need to create any kind of narratives about that. That would be irresponsible. We also don't need to be talking about how a locker room is divided when you've got guys in the locker room that are saying, "We're good. What are y'all talking about?" I think that they would know better than us. But that doesn't mean that it was a wise decision for Jaxson Dart to do this when you have an abundance of players who obviously have the feelings that they have about this particular administration. And when you see some of the things that have happened recently that have disenfranchised communities like the black communities and others in an uproar over some of the decisions that have been made, particularly pertaining to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and what you have people feeling about that at this particular moment in time. To have that just happen days ago and for Jaxson Dart to show up on the stage to introduce him, of course, Abdul Carter's initial reaction was going to be that. What I would say, however, is how are we pointing the finger at just Jaxson Dart, but we don't bring up the fact that both the Harbaughs, John and Jim, went to see Trump when Trump got put back into office as the 47th president. The fact is they have a right to do what they want. I'm not condemning them for it. But the point is that was barely mentioned with anybody. And nobody said anything about that. So if we're not going to say anything about that, then why are we saying so much about Jaxson Dart? If we're going to be consistent, let's be consistent. Let's hold the coaches accountable to the same degree that we're holding a player accountable. That's how I look at it. But as it pertains to Jaxson Dart, you are the quarterback. And when you think about stars that have been in New York, the Derek Jeters of the world, the Aaron Judges of the world, the Eli Mannings of the world, they had very non-assuming personalities. They were a bit distant from the public eye per se in terms of stances that they may have been willing to take publicly because they understood that they were in the media capital of the world. This is the market that they're living in. And as a result, particularly considering with the election of Zohran Mamdani, who obviously is in the complete opposite direction of a Donald Trump, even though he walked up to the nation's capital looking to get some money from the president and this administration and this federal government. The bottom line is their politics are perceived as completely and totally polar opposites. And so to know that you're representing a franchise that in that city, that represents that city, and knowing what the politics are like in that city and knowing what your locker room potentially is like as well, it is incumbent upon Jaxson Dart to take those things into consideration and not just be about what he wants to do, but to take into account the kind of effect it's going to have on his teammates. And by teammates, I mean everybody. I'm not talking about just players. I'm talking about the executives that run the organization, ownership, et cetera, et cetera. How stuff comes across and the kind of collateral effect that it may have on everybody that you're associated with as a member of the New York Giants is something that he should take into consideration, and he didn't. And so because of that, that's the only reason that I would agree with you on that, Doggy, and say, hey, you might want to watch yourself in that. It's not a crime, again. It's not a crime. It's not even wrong for him to do if that's what he felt. But you got to take into account the ramifications and the consequences that may come along with it, as opposed to thinking it wasn't going to have any effect at all. And then I didn't even bring up the last part. Where you play college ball at, once again, Ole Miss comes into play. What we've been talking about with Ole Miss, with Lane Kiffin, and why Lane Kiffin left, and how it would possibly be easier to recruit at LSU than it would be to recruit at Ole Miss. I went down there, had a marvelous time, promised them I was coming back for their game against Lane Kiffin and LSU this year. But, when you hear the words Mississippi and you are a black person, it does give you cause to pause if you are not from Mississippi. And somebody went out there and they were joking around and they tweeted something about Ole Miss when they were talking about Jaxson Dart the other day. So these are all the kind of things, the residue of such actions that sometimes need to be taken into consideration before you decide to do such a thing.
I will say on this show, it feels like the last few times we've talked about the Giants and their players have been at events. Scattaboo at a wrestling event. You talked about Jaxson Dart at the Kentucky Derby, Jaxson Dart now at a rally. We need to start talking about these players maybe being at sporting events or supporting their team a little bit more. That's probably the bottom line here. Coming up next on First Take, with a berth in the NBA Finals in sight, Stephen A. think this season is already a success for the New York Bucks. We'll tell you next.